Okay, so now I'm showing the block 3 of your second course, MZY 102. 102 is for the PG Diploma and MSc Geoinformatics. Okay, it is the course title, Remote Sensing and Image Interpretation. The title for the third block will be slightly different, but the content is almost like the same. So it is the image interpretation, volume 2, and I'll be covering the block 3, that is visual interpretation in the case of diploma and masters. And for let me just come here. Okay, I'm not able to do that. And for MZY002, this is the block title, that is image interpretation. So there is slight difference in the title of that, but the contents will be same. So now I'm putting it on slideshow mode, and you can just tell me if it is fine. Otherwise, we'll Okay, I'm just putting like this only. Okay, so can you see here? There are unit 7, unit 8, unit 9, and unit 10. Yes, there are 4 units in the PGCGI. But later on, we found that there are certain things that needs to be made more clear. So what we did was we divided this visual interpretation unit into the two parts. So we have these two units separately, and then two, and then third and the fourth. So we have 4 units in this particular block. And this unit number 10, which was earlier part of the block 3 in PGCGI, has now been shifted to the block 4 for diploma and master. But I'll be taking that in case you have missed something earlier regarding the false color composite, true color composite, and histogram, etc. I'll just try to cover it here. Okay, so let me just come here, and there were some practicals that is based on this particular block. The visual image interpretation part that we have carried out earlier, which Madam Susan has taken, and there will be another practical exercise that will be again same, but it will make use of aerial photo interpretation. So there are two different practical exercises that you have done or will be doing later on. Okay. So for this particular unit, the first unit on visual image interpretation. So after studying that particular unit, you should be able to differentiate between aerial photo interpretation and image interpretation. Then you should also be able to describe the elements and the keys of visual image interpretation, explain the importance of image scale, define the minimum mapping unit, explain the process of visual image interpretation, develop skills in the visual image interpretation of remote sensing image. Now, there are certain words we'll be using more commonly, and those are the visual interpretation and image interpretation. So let us see what these terms mean. So when we say visual, it is the perception. Visual perception is the ability to interpret information and surroundings from the effects of visible light reaching the eye. Interpretation is the process of extraction of qualitative and quantitative information of the objects which are present in the aerial photographs or satellite remote sensing images. In general, the interpretation is known as image interpretation, except for the case when the interpretation is carried out specifically on the aerial photograph. In that case, it is called aerial photo interpretation. But the theoretical concepts remain the same. So aerial photo interpretation is a process of examining and extracting useful information from aerial photographs. And the photographs taken from an aerial aircraft or helicopter using a precision camera are termed as aerial photographs. Okay, so anyone would like to tell here what is the difference between a photograph and an image? Anyone? Okay, please go through that. Let us discuss that at some other time. What is the difference between a photograph and an image? Okay, so I'm just moving forward here. So when we say image interpretation, there are two kinds of interpretation are there. One is called visual and second is called digital image interpretation. And it is based on the mode of the interpretation and the way it is done. Based on that, it is categorized into visual and digital. Now, visual image interpretation, when we say it is a process of identifying features visible on the images by an analyst or interpreter and communication of information obtained from these images to others for evaluating their significance. So it is not just that you have done the interpretation and it is sufficient. It should be done systematically, scientifically, and anyone else does this, whoever wants to do or does the process should be able to almost replicate what you have done. Okay, so if I have done interpretation of a particular image, if I assume that it is done, it is correct 100%, but it is not us who should be saying that. It is somebody else should be able to verify that whatever interpretation has been done, it has been done with accuracy. Okay, and when we say digital interpretation, so digital interpretation involves analysis of remote sensing data and extraction of information and interpretation, which is carried out with the help of some computer or software. This is another definition. Let us see it again. What is visual image interpretation? It is the process of identifying features on the images by an analyst or interpreter and communication of information obtained from these images to others for evaluating their significance. And thus, the job of an image interpreter is to translate images into information. And there are certain fields where this image interpretation is particularly useful. Okay, in for various kind of analysis in the domains of geography, geology, agriculture, forestry, environment, ocean studies, wetlands, conservation of natural resources, urban and regional planning, defense, and there are many more fields where it is used, which has been used, and it is also being used currently. Now, for someone to become interpreter or to do interpretation properly, what is the requirement? So requirements of an interpreter is that interpretation technique requires extensive training and is labor intensive. It is not that you will. I think mentioning that other day also, while this lab session on image interpretation was being done. I mentioned that it is not that you will learn today and you will be becoming expert. It takes years of experience to be perfect or say almost perfect in the image interpretation task. Because one feature, whatever we can see today, there may be some other features that may appear quite same. So we need to identify those features as the features which they are actually, and that takes a lot of effort on the side of the image interpreter. So one interpreter has to be well versed not only with the subject, that in the field where he or she is trying to interpret the features present in the image, but also the subject knowledge. Like I was talking about the example on image vegetation. So somebody who is trying to identify various kinds of vegetation from an image of vegetation species or communities. So one needs to know, like suppose I want to know pine trees. If I want to map pine uh, trees from an image, so I should know whether pine trees may be present or not in the geographical area of the image that I am visualizing. Okay, so because all this species has the habitats have their own specific habitats, so I cannot expect any, say, coastal vegetation to be present in the land. And likewise, I cannot expect, or I should not expect the land vegetation to be available or present in the coastal areas, because there are certain habitats, okay, which are specific for certain ecosystems. So one needs to know, one needs to be good not only in the subject knowledge, but also in the task of image interpretation. And the success in visual image interpretation varies with the training and experience on the pictorial data analysis. If the interpreter has an artistic and photographic sense, then the information derived from the interpretation process may be more authentic and reliable. Okay, what it tries to say is that it is not just one way, one thing to uh, identify features. It is also to be, we should also be good in the say marking the boundaries of that those features also properly. So this is what it is trying to convey. Now let us see at the merits and the demerits of these two kinds of image interpretation. Visual image interpretation, when we talk about, uh, in that case, the whatever experience is there of the analyst, that is available, because analyst can identify certain features on the image through his or her experience, okay, and the knowledge. And it is also good, very good for extraction of spatial information, meaning that you can make use of the context of the features, okay, context and association, etc. When we talk about digital image interpretation, it is good that it will require much less time. You have seen in the case of classification. Okay, it does not take much time to classify an image, and so that will reduce the time which is required for interpretation. And if the way it is done, it is done properly, then the results can be reproduced n number of times by anybody. Okay, and extraction of quantitative information is possible and much easier in the case of digital image interpretation. Okay, and now let us look at the demerits of both these techniques. Uh, First, we talk about the visual interpretation. The demerits to that, it is time consuming. If it is a small area, it will not take much time. But if it is for larger area, it is going to take much more time for interpretation. And the interpretation results for the visual interpretation may vary with time and the person who is doing that, because everybody's experience will be different. Okay, even if the same person is doing the image interpretation, maybe today he or she is doing, and maybe after 5-10 years again she is asked to do the interpretation of the same image, the interpretation will be different. If not much, it would be at least slightly different, because with this passage of time, the experience of the analyst or the perception of the analyst might have changed, okay, for that particular feature. So it is not exactly replicable. So that is one demerit of visual interpretation. Whereas if we talk about digital interpretation, here the image analyst experience and knowledge is not available, and it is poor in extracting spatial information, meaning that the knowledge that comes with the interpreter regarding the context of features, that is not available with the digital image interpretation. In the case of visual image interpretation, the the main the basis of interpretation is how you can use of all the elements of image interpretation. There are 7 elements that were taught earlier, isn't it? So those all elements can be make use of in the case of visual image interpretation. Whereas in the case of digital image interpretation, it is mainly the color or the DN values that is generally the basis for image digital image interpretation. Okay. Any query till now, or shall I proceed further? Okay, so initially, as I mentioned, it started with aerial photographs, and then later on, with the technological advancements, we have moved on to satellite images. And also, in the case of earlier, it was analog photographs, and now it is all digital images. So earlier, at the time of World War One and Two, those aerial photographs were used for extracting information across the borders, and there were several platforms. The pigeons were initially used. A small camera was tied into their necks, and it was programmed to take photographs every few seconds. So that is how it used to be taken. Later on, then the balloons were used as a platform for aerial photography, and also the kites were used as another platform for aerial photography. Later on, then the space shuttle, satellites, and now the drones are used for acquiring images. So these are some of the uh, things that are used and which are known as image elements of image interpretation. Okay, so tone, texture, size, shape, shadow, pattern, sight, and association. All these elements are used for image interpretation purpose. So there are certain tasks which are involved in the image interpretation process, and these tasks are classification, enumeration, mensuration, and delineation. We'll see that what all these classes are, these tasks are. So classification is the task of assignment of objects, features, or areas to the classes based on their appearance on the images, and distinctions are made between 3 levels of confidence and precision. The first level is detection, determination of presence or absence of a certain feature. Then the recognition, what that feature is, need to assign identity of that feature. And third is identification. So identification of objects or feature can be specified with enough confidence and detail to place it in a specific class. So these are the 3 levels of confidence and precision in the first task, that is classification. Coming to the enumeration, it is a task of listing or counting discrete items visible on an image. Third is mensuration or measurement. It is an important function in many image interpretation problems. It is of 2 kinds: measurement of distance and height, and by extension, volumes and areas also. Measurement is a quantitative assessment of image brightness. And the last task is delineation. Finally, the interpreter must delineate or outline regions as observed on the images, and based on the distinct areal units that are characterized by specific tones and textures, and to identify edges or boundaries. So recognition, delineation, and mensuration may all be required as the interpreter examines an image. So you
Uh,
have done the
Excuse me,
practical
sir.
part first, and then you are coming to the theory part. Yeah, please.
Sir, what about extraction process? Like, do we have extraction also? Like, classification is there, detection is there,
No, no, when
extraction
we
is also.
say, yeah, of course, when we say, see, just I just come to that. When we say classification, enumeration, this delineation is the one wherein you are marking the boundaries of the features that you have identified. Okay, so once you have marked the boundaries, it is basically your abstraction part.
Okay.
So we have come to this. Now we are going to the next part, that is the prerequisites for image interpretation. So uh, when we are talking about image interpretation, there has to be a remote sensing data, and for that one it needs to have a remote sensing system, and then the knowledge of the image and sensor characteristics. So the band combination that you are visualizing in the computer on the computer, that you should be aware of, so that you will know, because the other day we have seen that depending upon the band combination that you are looking at, the elements of image interpretation will vary. Something that you see in the true color composite will be different if you see in your false color composite. Okay, that will again be different if you visualize in a standard false color composite. So which band you are using for visualizing the features, or in which band combination you are using for your image interpretation, accordingly your elements of image interpretation will be varying, particularly the color or the tone. Okay, so then the proficiency based on the knowledge of the subjects, as we had discussed earlier, and if we are familiar with the geographic region or the locality of the image that we are trying to interpret, then also it will be good. That is why the ground truthing or field data becomes very important when we go for image interpretation. So when we say image interpretation here, we are using both the things, whether it is a visual image interpretation or even for classification. Because the other day I mentioned that when you are taking the signatures for image classification purpose, so you should be confident that those image feature that you are labeling into, say, water body, you should be sure that it is actually the water body that you are assigning the class to that. Similarly, any other features like, say, roads or habitation or the forest or any other feature that you are identifying from the image, you should be sure that it is actually the feature that you are marking into or you are trying to classify into. Now, this is exercise number 12 for PGCGI. It is aerial photo interpretation, and it is the first one that you have to carry out. This has not been done till now. It has been scheduled for later time. So whatever you have done in the visual image interpretation exercise, you have to do this exercise on the aerial photographs. Earlier you have done it on the satellite image. Now you have to do it for aerial photograph. But the elements of interpretation are the same. This is number 13. It is again the visual image interpretation. As I mentioned here, you have already done this part. So now you should be thorough with this. So these are the elements of visual image interpretation: tone, size, shape, texture, association, shadow, sight, and pattern. And you are now all familiar with this because it was taken up by Madam Susan during your exercise. So, visual interpretation of satellite images usually involves consideration of two basic elements, which are categorized into image elements or terrain elements. So, the first seven elements, tone, size, shape, texture, association, shadow, and sight, are the image element, and the eighth element, pattern, is the terrain element. Somebody had asked question that time regarding the types of drainage pattern. She was mentioning about meandering and dendritic. So those are the examples of your terrain elements you can see for particularly for river. So drainage patterns, landforms, erosion, soil, vegetation, land use patterns, those are examples of your terrain elements pattern. Now let us briefly discuss all these elements one by one. Tone refers to color or relative brightness of an object in the color image, and the relative and quantitative shades of gray in black and white. Actually, it is in the grayscale image. Okay. So in general, the smooth surface tends to have high reflectance than the rougher surface with less reflectance. And this is influenced by several factors like the light reflectivity of the objects, angle of the reflected light, the geographic latitude, the type of photography, and the film sensitivity. This is particularly in the case of air photographs. Light transmission of filters, photographic processing. Now, while answering some questions earlier, I gave an example of histogram for a water body or for say ocean. Okay, I mentioned that mostly it will be low values because water has low reflectance in the visible range. Okay, but suppose there is in the case of say large lakes or reservoirs or the coast, you will see that in some of you might be aware there is something called sun glint. So when you see a water surface through your eyes, sometimes there is a quite a lot of reflection from sun, so it appears much brighter. So while the images are taken up are captured, this sun glints may also be captured in the image. So, although the feature is actually the water body, but due to the surface undulations, reflections from the surface, this there are some spots in the image that are very bright, and those are called sun glint. So, before you do any processing or interpretation of those images, you need to first correct or remove those sun glint. There are some techniques through which those sun glints can be removed. Okay, so that is why it is being said repeatedly here that it is not just the subject knowledge, but also one needs to be good in interpretation. So somebody who sees say white bright patches in the water body, those are not cloud, those are not say floating ice, those may be sunlight. Okay, so one needs to be uh, good in identifying those pictures. So this is one image of Doon Valley and the nearby areas. This is a grayscale image you can see here. Now you can see some large, thicker white lines here. There are some lines here, and these are the some. So these are basically your river or some drainages here. Okay, some channels are there, so that are appearing brighter. Why do they appear bright? It may be that the case that at the time when the image was taken, maybe it was dry or the water was less and there was more amount of sand or the small pebbles or boulders on the bed, on the river bed. And this is another image. It's a color image taken from Google Earth, and it shows IGNU campus, the headquarters at Delhi, and it shows some of the buildings here. And these buildings are basically academic complex here. And this is the Vice Chancellor's office block here, and these are some other offices here. This is basically Electronic Media Production Center, and this is the Vice Chancellor office, and there are some other buildings which are there. This is an image covering the almost India and surrounding countries here. Also captured are the Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, and part of your Indian Ocean. Okay, so now we can move forward and see the second one, that is size. Now, the purpose of showing this image was that how the different pictures appear in different colors. Like water body here, it is appearing in dark blue here. The land part is appearing here in the some shades of green, depending upon the vegetation or the present there. And in the higher part, Himalaya, you can see there are some lines which are dark, and there is some bright line here. So what it could be cloud, glaciers also, and some kinds of vegetation. In the part of Rajasthan, we can see it is a brighter pixels here, and those represent the compared to the darker areas. Okay, just please hold on a minute. I just come back. Second element is the size here, which is also an important tool for identification of certain features. And the size of an object in an image is a function of scale. Hence, the size of object must be considered in the context of the scale of a photograph. Okay. And the third dimension is the height of the object is not readily measurable on satellite images, but valuable information can be derived from the shadows of the object. It can be relative height with respect to other features present in the image. This is a part of Himalayan terrain. We can see certain water bodies here. Some are smaller, some are larger, and the shapes are also are different. Okay, so you can from this you can get an idea about the size of these different uh, water bodies. Here, this is a part of a Jawaharlal Nehru University campus in New Delhi, and there are certain buildings. So based on size, you can understand what is the difference in the dimensions of these buildings. Okay, and looking at also not talking about the shadow here, but that we can discuss little later. So this is another element, size. And now coming forward uh, to this objects, Imperial Tower. And with respect to this towers, you can make an uh, get an idea about the other objects in this image. Shape is another important element. It relates to general form. Basically, it is a configuration or outline of an individual objects. And based on the shape of different features, we can identify these features. As we discussed the other day, the natural features will be generally irregular, whereas the regular features or some regular geometric shapes that indicate presence of human or man-made features. Like here, this is a river channel here, and this is an irrigation canal that you can see here. So you see how much of non-linearity is present in the case of natural objects, but whereas in the case of man-made objects, there is a lot of linearity or regularity in that. Some other examples here. This is a Chilika Lake in Odisha, and this is one image of a small swimming pool, and this is the railway station, and this is of the metal road. Okay, now coming to the another example. It is a Major Dhyan Chand Stadium. okay, in New Delhi. So this shows different how is the structure of this stadium, and based on the markings that are present in that, we can understand what it may be used for. Okay, so texture is another element which actually is the expression of roughness or smoothness as exhibited by the image, and it is the rate of change of tonal values. So suppose there is a lot of variation in the pixel values of different objects, it will appear as rough, and if there is not much difference in the pixel values, the feature will appear much smoother. So this is the basic thing. So this is how you make use of your spectral response curves, or the how much of degree of reflection or exhaustion is there in that. And also you see it is all relative, it is related to the scale. So at what the certain picture that you visualize at certain scale, it will be different, it will showing different texture, but you zoom it and then you see again that texture will appear differently. So like we discussed other features, other elements, and this also is dependent on the scale of the image. It is very simple example is that when you touch an object through of your finger, okay, so finger becomes your scale, and with respect to that, certain features may appear smoother or maybe rougher as compared to if you touch something with your palm. So maybe that might appear much smoother than when you touch it through your fingers. So this is how the scale plays an important role in how you visualize the textures of different objects. This image was shown the other day, and here you see this is a part of Varanasi, and where there is a water that appears much smoother because there is not much variation between the pixel values. And when you come to this part, land part, then there is a drastic variation, and then there are different buildings, habitations are there. So those buildings are there, and that appears to be coarser, much coarser than your river body. Similarly, for sandy areas and some part, it appears much smoother as compared to some other part. And vegetation also, it is smoother in many places. Now, these are again the examples how the scale determines the textures. So this is a river sand. It is just appearing much smoother here. This is sand dunes. This is appearing much smoother here, but at certain parts it is not smoother. And this is a beach sand due to there are some linings available here or present there. It is not appearing much smoother. These are sandbars. It is again smoother to some extent. Pond water, there is not much movement on the water surface. It is appearing much smoother. The lake water, there is effect of wind, so there is turbulation of the water surface, and it is not appearing as smoother as this pond water image. Then the reservoirs, and then this mangroves, as compared to the water body here, this basically creeks here. This appears to be coarser in the texture. So similarly, like that, there are different features that appear differently, and these are different kinds of forest. And at what scale you are visualizing them, it might appear smoother or rougher. Now coming to the next elements, it is the association. It is the occurrence of features in relation to its surroundings. Sometimes a single feature by itself may not be distinctive enough to permit its identification. It specifies the occurrence of certain objects or features in association of a particular object or feature. For example, something which is there, objects on the say on the sea or the coast, it may be port, or in the water. You can see it is a kind of ship uh, that we can again if whether it is a uh, say uh, barge or some other kind of ship, whether it is for transportation, used for transportation of materials, goods, or for humans. Again, you can understand from where it is birthed. This is airport and different kinds of objects which are there. There is something, one plane which is on the runway, and there are others which are parked at some places here. Shadow is another element which is especially important. Uh, uh, and how it is important? It is uh, there are two ways. The outline or shape of a shadow provides a profile view of objects, which aids in image interpretation. And objects within the shadow reflect little light and are difficult to discern on the image, which hinders interpretation. So it has certain advantages also and certain limitations, because the features which are present on the shadow side, they will not be much clear on the image. This is a Qutub Minar in Delhi, and you can see the objects here and then how far the shadow is. Based on that, probably you can get an idea of the height of this building, an approximate. Site refers to the topographic position. We earlier saw association, and now we are referring to a site. Okay, so association, we were talking about the spatial context. In the site, we are talking about the topographic position. So relationship of features to the surrounding features provides clue towards identity. Certain tree species located in areas of specific altitudes. Similarly, identification of landforms can help in deciphering the underlying geology. And another example is that the sewage treatment facilities are positioned at low topographic sites near stream or rivers to collect waste flowing through the system from the higher elevations. This is one example, and this is another pictorial example that shows the water coming from the higher reaches are getting deposited here at this point. Pattern is the eighth element, and it is developed in an image due to spatial arrangement of objects. In the earlier seven elements of interpretation, we were looking at individual objects, but here when we talk about pattern, it is not the individual object, but it is basically the arrangement, how the different objects are arranged. What is the arrangement or the spatial pattern of that? That is what we see in the pattern. So just for example, I will tell you here, like in a city or in a colony, how these different buildings are there. That is one kind of pattern in that. So that is the difference. Patterns can be identified as the spatial arrangement of objects in the image. For example, urban and rural settlement areas can be easily identified based on the patterns created by the rows of houses or the buildings. And coming to the drainage pattern, this is one image wherein you can see different kinds of patterns here. This is a drainage pattern here, and this is a mostly like trees, like tree like branches. So this is a dendritic patterns, and here you can see this is one pattern here. It is almost circular. So this is again, we need to see what is the elevation. So there is a high elevation at the center point, and from there the water is flowing outward. So there are, this is a radial kind of pattern here, and then the water is surrounding, and then it is moving like that. So this is a kind of another kind of pattern. So depending upon the topography, this kinds of arrangements may be patterns may be developed. This is for urban and urban pattern. This is how, this is an area in Delhi, Connaught Place, and where you can see how this the buildings are designed, or say these buildings are arranged in this circular manner here. So let us now try to summarize this, and these are the typical adjectives associated with the interpretation elements. When we talk about the location, it is basically the XY coordinates, longitudes, latitudes, and about the size, it could be length, width, perimeters, area, small, medium, large, like that we can use the word for interpretation. And the shape, it is maybe linear, circular, radial, or etc. Shadow, when we talk about, it is a cloud cast by solar illumination from the side. When you say tone or color, it is maybe gray tone, maybe light or intermediate or dark. And texture, when we say, it is the characteristics, placement, and arrangement of repetition of tone or color. And it may be characterized as smooth or intermediate or rough or coarse. And pattern, as we saw, it is a spatial arrangement of objects in the ground. So it may be defined as either systematic or unsystematic or random, like that. Then the site association, it could be elevation, slope, aspects, etc. Situation, so objects are placed in a particular order or orientation related to one another position, and related phenomena are usually present. This is what it tries to summarize all these image elements of image interpretation. Now coming to the image interpretation keys. So based on these image elements, you prepare a table that you already done as a part of exercise number 13, visual image interpretation. So in that, you have learned how to identify different features and how to use different terms to describe those features and make it image interpretation keys. So these keys are categorized into three: selective keys, elimination keys, and dichotomous keys. So it is the interpreter selects the example images with supporting text. The interpreter selects the example that most nearly resembles the features or conditions found on the image under study. Elimination is interpretation proceeds step by step from general to specific and leads to elimination of all features or conditions except the one being identified. Okay, so here in the selective key, you are just trying to identify one particular features on the image, and the second way, you first rule out all other features which are not the features of your interest, and whatever feature remains is your the one that is being identified here. And dichotomous key is the interpreter makes a series of choices between two alternatives and progressively eliminates all but one possible answer. So this is the way how interpretation is done, and this is an example of how image interpretation keys are prepared. And this is example for forest mapping, and it has been done by Japan's Association of Forestry. So different kinds of features like cedar, uh, forest, or trees, they appear. How do they appear? So dark, and the ground shape is conical with sharp like that. This is how the different kinds of features are uh, uh, identified, and the terms are used for them. Scale of the image is another important thing, and it is carefully chosen depending upon the observations that we made. Scale of photographs, images should be such that it will permit differentiation of objects. So, if you are going for interpretation with certain specific objects, so the image scale becomes important, and that is why the selection of an image suitable for mapping of those objects of interest becomes important. And minimum mapping unit is the maps derived from remotely sensed data are often presented using a minimum mapping unit. So because these different images have a different spatial resolutions, and depending upon the spatial resolutions, the uh, the minimum size of an object that can be interpreted or mapped in that image is different. So this is what is called as minimum mapping unit or mapping unit. So it is defined as the smallest size of the ideal entity on the ground that can be identified in an image and mapped as a unique and discrete entity. So for a given map scale, the size of dimensions below the minimum mapping unit, a long narrow features is represented as a line and a small area as a point. So uh, it cannot be mapped as a polygon. For example, the streams and rivers below the minimum mappable unit will be represented as lines and the pond as a point. So this is what about the image, the unit number 7 for PGCGI, and for PG Diploma and Masters. The first two units are now covered in that. Now coming to the next unit, that is visual image interpretation, related examples. So let us see that what it is. There are certain examples given in those that unit. You can look at it and then we can try to identify different features from that. So now let me talk less here. Let me ask some questions, and I hope that you will all reply to that. Now, these are the two different images here. This is a true color image, and this is a false color composite. Now, can somebody point out here uh, where is the vegetation in this images?
Green color is the vegetation.
Green
True
color.
color.
Okay, so
Sir,
why do
Green color is the agriculture land.
okay.
Forest cover, including forest cover area.
Okay, see, it is difficult to identify forest in image. Okay, so because this image appears to be of an urban area, so we can safely say there is some vegetation, but whether it is a
vegetation.
forest or something else, that we needs to be seen. Yeah, crop areas, agriculture areas can be comparatively identified much easier because there is a specific pattern or the shape of those areas. So because generally those crop areas will be in the say in the plain areas, it will be almost squarish or rectangular. In the hill areas, if it is a steppe agriculture, then that will appear a little different. So it will be following the elevation contours in that. Okay, so in this case it appears in the first true color image, vegetation appears green. Now the next question arises: why do you say that why do the vegetation appear green in this true color composite?
That is
Uh,
because of sun, right?
Sir, रिफ्लेक्शन ऑफ द रेडिएशन, जब सनलाइट हमारे उसमें जो जितना एब्जॉर्व करता है वो उतना ज्यादा रेड होता है, मतलब रेड को रिफ्लेक्ट करता है, तो आई थिंक
अच्छा,
सन
कोई और?
रिफ्लेक्शन.
ओके, और कोई बताना चाहेगा?
Sir, in the true color composite, it is green because in the green band only that specific wavelength has been put, and therefore it is showing green.
Okay, let me just try to put it properly in a scientific way how it should be answered. Okay, in the true color composite,
Sir,
vegetation appears green
water
because
can absorb sunlight directly, so it's showing black by the black color. And
okay,
okay, sir.
we'll come to that part later. We are talking here specifically about the vegetation.
Sure,
So
sir.
we said that vegetation appears green in this true color composite, and the scientific basis for that is that because vegetation has certain uh, elements that reflects much higher in the green wavelength region. Okay, and that image taken in the green wavelength region has been displayed on the image in the green plane. Okay, and that is why as compared to the red and blue planes, the other bands, those features, basically your vegetation features appear green. Okay, because it has a much higher reflection in the green wavelength as compared to other wavelength regions.
Sir,
But
is my answer is right? I am also saying that.
नहीं, हम नहीं कह रहे कि आप गलत हैं। मैं ये कहता हूँ कि
नहीं सर,
there is
मैंने ये कहा था रिफ्लेक्शन ज्यादा होता है रेड से, इसलिए वो रेड शो कर रहा है आई थिंक.
हाँ, but see here there are three bands. There are three bands which are used to display. Okay.
RBG.
Yeah, RGB. So okay.
RGB.
So
Okay.
in the second band combination, that false color composite, it is basically the standard false color composite. Now here the vegetation appears red. Why? It is the same area, but here the vegetation appears red. What is the reason?
Sunlight
Green.
reflection.
No, that is, I would not appreciate that because that is a very broad answer. Okay. Answer when it
Because
is
we have
asked,
seen the band combinations.
it should be specific. Here the vegetation appears red in the standard false color composite because the near infrared band, which has the highest reflection for vegetation, is displayed here in the red plane. Okay, that is why, as compared to your blue and green planes, the vegetation is appearing red. Okay, because it has highest proportion in NIR region, and that NIR band has been displayed here in the red plane. Okay, I hope you got this answer.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so they proceed now further.
So
Water
one quick question.
theory. Water
Yeah,
के बाद हम
one
आगे
quick-
करेंगे. We'll talk about the water later on.
So one
Okay.
quick question on this picture.
Sorry.
One quick question on the picture. Go back to the picture. In one of the building, it is showing as a gray or something in the red band. Why is it so? You see, in the true color, both the buildings are visible in white color. Whereas in the false color, one of the building is in gray or some other blue color or something.
Which part? Which part?
The upper part, go up. The two buildings are there, right? The above one, go up little bit further. No, on the right hand side. Yeah, that one. That one in true color, it is showing as white. In
Yeah.
red color,
Yeah, that is why you see when we identify different features, we need to know which band combination that we are seeing. Also, we
Okay.
should be knowing, we should be having some idea about the field, and that gives an idea about what kind of material may be there for that building. So you see here, it appears bright. Okay, what does it mean? Something which appears white, it means that there is almost equal amount of reflection in all the blue, green, and red bands here.
Okay.
Okay. But the same material in case of red, an IR band, okay, here it is. It is not reflecting same for this in this band combination. Okay, that is why it is not appearing white.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is another example from Bhuvan portal, and this is another image. Can you identify what kind of pictures are these?
Some watersheds.
But this seems to be a mining area.
There are some water bodies here, and yeah, somebody said mining area.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that appears to be the case here, because when the soil is dug up or removed from one portion, that area becomes that appear much brighter. And in the agriculture fields, if an area uh, has not been plowed for a long time, it will be appearing little say darker. But if it is freshly plowed, then it will appear much brighter because the soil particles will reflect more if it has been moved. This is another image of another area of Rajasthan. So what do you see in this? When we say Rajasthan, immediately something
It is
comes to mind that it is a desert.
sand dunes.
Okay. So this is how the say site or the association becomes important here, right? Because through the when we say some geographical area is mentioned, then we immediately know that we can, okay, this may be this may be this, that. Okay. So now moving forward, this is another image from another area. It appears much different here. But this is the way these features are arranged. It appears to be of an urban area, right? Now this is somebody was talking about the reflection from the water. Okay. Now this is a part of India, and this is Gujarat and Maharashtra, and this is of your Arabian Sea. Okay. Something peculiar here? Can somebody note here? What is the peculiarity about this region?
Sir,
The
repeat the question,
coastal
please.
area. Coastal area is something different.
Okay,
Sir,
which part of the coast?
like a southern
Near
part of Gujarat,
Gujarat.
southern part of Gujarat and Maharashtra is like a sandy area.
Sir, this seems to be sediments, sedimentary.
Yeah,
It's so and
actually you see this is an image of a part of
mm,
Gujarat, southern Gujarat. This is basically Saurashtra. Okay, so this
yes,
is
sir.
Cambay. In this region, you can see the water here is much darker here. Okay, as compared to this region, this is a area where water is appearing little brighter or brownish here.
It
And the
depend on the depth of water, sir.
here in this case, it is not the depth that is playing the major role. It is basically the amount of suspended sediment that is there in the water that is
Mm.
playing a major role with respect to the reflection from this area. Okay.
Okay, sir. Mm.
This is another image from Himalayan region, and you can see here how glaciated terrain appears like. Okay, so these are some of the glaciers here you can see here, and how do they appear on this. This is a larger part, larger area, and this is some zoom part of those areas. This part is of this region, one is of this region. So this is how it appears. So glaciers, when there is a fresh snow,
मम्मी दोनों में ही है.
in this case, it is appearing much different. So there are different features, different kinds of landforms which are present in the Mediterranean that we can try to identify. This is from a coastal region, and you can see here this up again a true color composite on the right side and the false color composite in the left side. So these two images appear different. Now, can somebody guess what it is? Which area it may be?
Sir, it's vegetation
Color is
area,
vegetation
forest,
and
Island, sir.
surrounding
forest.
part is
Island area.
Island.
coral reef.
Yeah, of course, this appears to be an island. Okay, and actually, it is a part of, I think, Andaman Nicobar Islands. So
Yeah.
these are some underwater features. Basically, these are the coral reefs here and here, and
Mm.
and this is the white line here, linear. Here also there is white line, almost linear.
Sediment area, sir.
These are basically beaches, sandy beaches.
Yes, sir.
And, but there are some other white spots here in this region, which also appears like linear. What this could be?
Those could be sandbars along the coral reefs.
Yeah, it could be, but the likelihood is less because something it is will be difficult. The sandbars will be difficult.
The
To
submerged area, the land, the island that is there, that has been created, the submerged area under the water.
Actually, you see, this is the deeper part of this region, and this is the shallower part. So when the water comes, this waves comes. So when they
It's the
come,
shelf part.
they will strike. Okay, so this is basically waves that form. So there is no physical features
It's a
here.
surfing area, sir. Surfing of water.
Yes. This is another from the coastal region. Now, what these are? Here, the boundary of these features has been it has been attempted to be delineated here. Okay, so this is a part of your eastern coast, and again this is a part of your, I think, western coast. Okay, so this is I think initial part of that Gulf of Cambay, and this is of I think Mahanadi Delta. So there are certain kinds of vegetation. This is a Bhitarkanika sanctuary in Odisha. And you will see the vegetation appears little different here. This is much darker. Again, it is a much darker here vegetation. Okay. Here also vegetation is much darker here, much dark, reddish, brown, maroonish here. Then you this part. So this is the land vegetation, and this is your coastal vegetation. And here also this is the land vegetation, and this is the coastal vegetation. There is an influx of water through the creeks here, and these are the mangroves. This darker vegetation are the mangroves, which are the evergreen plants. So these are just two examples to excite you, to get you initiated how this different pictures appear in different images, not only in images areas, but also in different band combinations. So we can use certain band combinations to identify certain specific features. Okay. Okay, now coming to the classification system. So we have read about land use, land cover. Okay, and when we do the mapping is done at some particular scale, and the map is prepared for some specific kind of theme. So here, if we talk about land use, land cover theme, so how those features are mapped and how those classes are labeled in the final map. This is important to know. Broadly, if you know, land cover refers to the type of features present on the surface of the land. It refers to a physical property or resources like, say, water, snow, grasses, forest, sand, or some crops. When we talk about land use, so that relates to some human activity or economic function for that area. Okay, it may be urban use, industrial use, some recreation areas, or some other use by the human. So this is the basic difference between land use and land cover. And it is very important. What is important? The land use land cover map is important as it is helpful in overcoming the problems like unplanned development, the environmental quality, loss of agricultural lands, destruction of natural wetlands and some habitats. So it is required in the understanding environmental processes and problems. These maps are an important tool in the planning process, and this could be used in the tax assessments, natural resource inventories, water resource inventory, flood control, water supply planning, wastewater treatment, and this kind of data is also required for assessment of environmental impact resulting from development and management of energy and natural resources. And this data is helpful in making national summaries of land use patterns and changes, and that would be a major guiding factor for policy formation at the national or regional scales. So there are certain land use, land cover classification schemes, and we just cannot randomly assign or label the classes. So there are standard classification schemes that are needed to be followed for any scientific mapping. So initially, the Anderson and others have given the classification schemes, and that was basically for the USA. And later on, this has been modified to suit for Indian conditions. So it is the ISRO, the National Remote Sensing Center, has been the agency which has prepared the Indian land cover classification system. And this is what is there are different levels as prepared by given by Anderson 1971. So this is level 1, that is the broad classes. As the levels increase, the details of that class will further increase. So when we come to the level 2, within the urban or built up area, there are certain classes that can be mapped if they are present in that particular image of that area. Then this is again the zoom part of that initial part. This is level 1. So this is class level 1 and urban or built up land. So when we go for level 2 mapping, then you can map these many classes, residential and classes. So there are specified codes for those classes so that you can follow for systematically doing a land use and mapping. Similarly, for agricultural land, the class is 2. For second level, it is 21, 22, 23 in that order. So cropland, pasture, and like that. Similarly, as I mentioned about the English scenarios, there are certain schemes are given for different scales. Initially, it was for 1:250,000 scale, and that contains up to level 2. And then later on, a different classification system was prepared, and it has much more details, much more levels. So level 3 and level 4 details up to that you can map. So role of field observation is very important in image interpretation. It is not only to gather the local knowledge beforehand before you start interpretation, and it is also for validation of the interpretation that we have made, and to gather data about areas or features that cannot be studied from the image data. So quality of image interpretation, it will depend on several factors like the knowledge and the experience of the interpreter, the data which is being used, and the guidelines that has been provided for mapping or interpretation of that. So this is about the examples, and that is given here. You can go through those materials, those units to know better. And if you have any query further, we can discuss it on some other time. The next unit is on the ground truth data collection, and this gives you a very good idea about different aspects of the ground truthing, right from say what is the ground truth data, how the planning and collection of ground truth data is to be done, and what is to be collected, when is to be collected, from where to be collect data, how to reach the ground truth site, and locate yourself on the ground, how to collect the information, and when you go to the field, what are the things that you need to carry along with you, what could be the cost or the estimates of data collection, and what are the do's and don'ts that one needs to know before embarking on the ground truth campaign. Then once you have done collected the data, what is to be done with the data? So that is that. So I'm just once you read this unit thoroughly, you should be able to define what is ground truthing, discuss the importance of ground truth data collection, explain the methods of sampling, describe how, when, and where to collect ground truth data, list out the things that you need to carry out while you are going for ground truth data collection, and point out the things that one needs to remember during field campaigns. So just in short, I will try to cover now that our session time is going to near is ending, because the next session will start. So ground truth is a term which is used in a range of remote sensing techniques. It generally refers to the data collected on site, on surface of the earth, regarding characteristics of the earth's surface features. Ground truth data are complementary to the remote sensing data, as it helps to link the image data to the ground reality. So it is ground truth when we say it is not always true, as it may have errors in it due to various factors like errors which might have been introduced during the data collection, or the time of data processing, or at the time of deriving inferences from the ground truth data that has been collected. So this could be the possibility of the errors coming in ground truth data. And ground truth is a term which is initially, because most of the data collection was done on the ground, so this name comes. Otherwise, for the data collection for the sea areas, for the seas, it is known as sea truth. So the ground truth term is a broad term. Okay, now it is also known as field work, field survey, ground survey, or reference data collection. When it is taken from the air, it's called air truth. When it is for the sea, it is called sea truth. And it is carried out for following purposes: to calibrate the remote sensor, to help in remote sensing data collection, to provide reliable data to identify different features, to locate the areas which are representative of the image, each image feature, in order to generate their spectral signatures so as to model the spectral behavior of specific image features, or to assess the accuracy of thematic maps generated and information derived from images, and also to validate them. So once we are going for ground truthing, we need to be aware of various things, like what are the project objectives. Accordingly, one needs to collect data and the features that is being studied, what are the natures of that, and the data that is being collected, it should represent all the features which are present in the study area. Data should represent the environmental conditions, and there should be selection of appropriate sampling strategy, and also the cost and time of data collection. So what to collect? So there are certain information that is needed to be collected. Those can be characterized as attribute, location, and time. And so there are two kinds of data. One is thematic data, and second is the spectral data. So in case of thematic data, it provides information about distribution of features related to a specific theme, like water bodies, land use, land cover features, crops, and forms, etc. In case of spectral data, it is not generally available in existing records reports and are to be collected from the field using some instruments such as radiometers, goniometer. So the spectral response or the spectral signatures of the features of interest are also collected from the field, and that is how the standard spectral libraries have been generated. Okay, so the USGS spectral library is that, and that gives spectral signature for different kinds of earth surface features, including vegetation, water, rocks, minerals, soils, etc. And it also has spectra, standard spectra for different kinds of minerals. And when you are going to identify certain features from an image, you can try to see how the spectra in your image is similar to the standard library. And that is how you can make use of how to, somebody had asked question earlier, how to make use of what is the practical use of the spectral signature. So this is the use to identify different features from the image. You can make use of this. So now moving quickly, let us now cover the very important part. This is how the sampling is done. So there are different ways. Suppose this is your study area. So in that case, you can follow some simple random sampling pattern. You can follow there are some certain classes. So you can see that those all the classes have at least some number of points covered in that. Okay, or you may go for systematic sampling. So instead of following certain patterns, you can follow some specific distance, so your points can be arranged. And there is one more that is called systematic stratified unaligned sampling. This is how you can also keep your sampling patterns. It should be systematic. It should be also stratified to represent different kinds of classes present in that. Okay, and this is your another example of sampling. It is known as clustered sampling, and this is not done at every places. Basically, in the areas which have limited access. So you identify a point here, and from there, whichever areas, how much you can go to that other parts, particularly in the forest, etc., dense forest. This kind of techniques are utilized. But sampling pattern is used. So there are certain points that are needed to be known at the time of data collection, like method provides appropriate student data, that the method we are using. Data is in form which could be understood and interpreted by other team members. What happens is, if it is a large team, so the team which does the ground truthing, that may be different than the team that is interpreting or that is mapping. So mapping team may be different than the ground truth team. So the team that is collecting data, ground truth data, needs to collect the data in such a form that those data should be easily understood, and that the team can make use of that for interpretation. Okay, so this is important. The method is defensible. The method that you have adopted for ground truthing, it should be having a scientific logic, and data collected and the outcome should be meaningful to end user. And the process of data collection is generally carried out in the following two broad steps: selecting the appropriate approach and making the measurements, noting the observations, and recording the measurements. So these are some sample forms that is given in your material. In one of the units in your first course, a simple ground truth data collection sheet has been given, and this is further from that. So this is for a specific theme. This is for mapping data and cover, and this is specifically for biodiversity related studies. So this is the proforma given by NRSC, ISRO, and from there this is that. So depending upon the feature that you are going to map or you are interested in, the format of this field data collection forms may be different. Just a minute, you gather your thoughts. I'll just come back. Okay, these are the things that you need to carry while you're going for data collection. So based on maps, georeference images, interpreted outputs, the cases for the maps, the permissions. If you're visiting a site that requires certain permission, that should be there. And if you are collecting lot of data, you need to have proper labeling, proper stickers and flags for labeling the samples, and data sheets, the forms that needs to be filled on the ground. If you are interested for spectral libraries, then in that case you need to take the field spectrometers with required accessories, GPS, handsets, the camera with extra batteries and charger. Sometimes you do not have access to say power, so those will be handy times. And there could be some other instruments like measuring tapes, and even for elevation some instruments may be required. Compass, scale, sample bags, bottles, field notebooks, and pens or pencils for recording and marking samples or filling the forms, markers, sharpeners. So these are just generalized things, but depending upon the areas that you are visiting, that those requirements may vary. So something that is used in the coastal areas may be quite different than the one which is used in the land areas or in the water. You can, all of you can mark your attendance, please, and then so that we can record it. So now it is done for the PGCGI students. It is done for the PG Diploma and PG MSc. But in the course 002, there is another unit that is characteristics of digital image, remote sensing images. So that is covered in the 002 block 3 as last unit of that. In the case of diploma and masters, this unit has been shifted to the 4th block. So you already had a session on digital image processing. So in that it must have been covered. But just for the sake, if somebody wants to know, I'll just repeat it here. Once you read this unit thoroughly, you should be able to know or define what a digital image is and discuss its characteristics. Should be able to list the components of an image processing system, discuss the advantages of digital image processing, identify the steps in digital image processing, and describe the concept of true and false the composite, define image histogram, and discuss its importance. So this is all covered under this particular unit. So we have discussed mostly about the visual image interpretation, and we also seen what is the comparison, what are the merits and demerits of the visual and digital image interpretation techniques. So when we come to the digital image interpretation or the processing, there are two basic interests how it is there. One is that there is an improvement of pictorial information for human interpretation, and also processing of image data for storage, transmission, and interpretation of the for machine perception. That is the major applications of digital image processing. So when a paper photograph is scanned through a scanner and stored in a computer, it becomes a digital image as it has been converted into digital mode. However, in the case of remote sensing image, when we are specifically interested in that, so we are particularly interested not just in how it appears, but also we should be interested what is the basis on which these images appear. Like this is a small example that is shown here. This image shows you some pixels, and those pixels are in grayscale, and you can see here like uh, here you can see some pixels are quite bright, some are dark, some are in between. Okay, so this brightness or darkness of the pixels will vary depending upon what is the pixel value or digital number of that. So this is example of that, and this is a radiometric scale of that. So something which appears much brighter has a higher value, and something which appears darker has a lower value. Now, for image, we can define different terms. We define image in terms of, like, say, uh, it has a finite number of rows and columns. And to read a particular pixel at certain locations, we read like this. So this is the these are the columns, and these are the other rows. These are the rows. So this is how it is there. So this is the first column, second column, third column, and fourth column. Suppose you want to know what is this pixels. So what is the coordinates? What is the pixel coordinates of this, or say image coordinates of this pixel? So in that case, it is the row number 3, and this is the also the column number 3. So 3 is how we define the pixel coordinates of this. Advantages that we have seen. So in the case of digital image processing, there are basically 4 steps. One is image processing steps that are needed to be that involves the correction of the errors that is present in the image. Then the image enhancement to improve the visual clarity of certain features present in the image that are of our interest. Then image transformation that may also be done using some combination of bands to further improve certain features, and then the process of thematic information extraction of the features of interest. So these are the types and characteristics of digital images. There are various kinds of images. This is called as black and white or binary image. The values will be either 0 and 1. There are only 2 values, and then this is second type is a grayscale or monochrome image. So the values, as we saw in the last example, the values will be from, say, it will be in various shades of gray, from black to white. Then comes the color or the RGB image, and herein instead of regular image, this is another type of image. So in that case, basically you know that it is a combination of certain bands. Then only you can visualize something with color. So and the digital number, when we say it is in digital image, as we saw in the previous example, like each pixel, the pixel is the smallest unit of an image, and each pixel has a certain value, and that value is called either pixel value or digital number or DN value. So this is how there, and depending upon what is the radiometric resolution of that image, the range of the DN values or the pixel values will be varying. So different kinds of radiometric resolutions for a 7-bit or 8-bit or 9-bit or 12-bit image. This is the range of value that will be present in that. And this is how we visualize the image. This is the cross section of our eyes, and these are the three primary colors: red, green, and blue. And you can see that depending upon the combination of certain colors, so like say red and green, when they come join in equal amount, then the resultant color is the yellow. When there is a green and blue in equal amount, then it shows the cyan color. When there is a red and the blue colors in equal amount, it shows in magenta color. So red, green, and blue are the primary colors, whereas yellow, say cyan, magenta, and yellow, CMY, are your secondary colors. When all these three primary colors are there in equal amount, then those features will appear white. Okay, so this is the primary color, and this is the combination of your secondary colors.
Sir, what about
This
gray
is
color?
the concept that is used, that is to be known while you are interpreting an image. So which band you have put in which color planes, that is important to know. Sorry, somebody was asking something.
I think, sir, what about gray color? How the gray color?
Gray will be, you see, like see in this image. Okay, something appears dark, black. It means what? There is no reflection from this. Okay.
Right, sir.
Okay, so it means that there is no reflection from any of the bands. That is why it is appearing darker.
तो जैसे सर वो ग्रे स्केल इमेज होता है, तो दैट मीन्स वो कुछ रिफ्लेक्ट नहीं कर रहा है, बस वो एक बेसिक आइडिया दे रहा है अपने को.
नहीं नहीं, हम ये नहीं कह रहे हैं. हम ये कह रहे हैं कि see in the grayscale image the values will range from, or the colors will range from black to white. In between black to white are all gray. So gray
अच्छा,
is
वो
very
स्केल,
important.
अच्छा स्केल वहां पे वो वाला है,
हाँ.
आरजीबी नहीं.
Yeah, yeah. So those values are in between your black and white. So if it is a light gray and dark gray, that distinction we can make. Okay, whether it is
Okay.
it is how much is the absorption or reflection, you can try to make it out. So see, as a human or as a human interpreter, we have certain limitation. We cannot identify uh, maybe beyond the 4, 5, or 6. Gray shades we cannot distinguish, but a computer can distinguish those things. Even a small difference of 1 pixel value, 1 dn value, can be differentiated by a computer. So that is why this digital interpolation has been useful in many cases.
Okay. Thank you.
So this is a true color composite. As we know, there are, suppose we have a 4 band in an image taken in blue, green, red, and near infrared valence regions. So when you combine the blue, green, and red, you can see a true color image, provided the blue band is assigned a blue color, green is assigned put in the green plane of the monitor, red is put in the red plane of the monitor. Then what you will see is as you see from your eyes. Okay, but any other combination of then this is your false color composite. But only thing is, if there is a one shift, like say instead of blue band, if green band is assigned into the blue plane, sorry, if the green band is assigned to the blue plane, if the red band is assigned into the green plane, and the NIR band is assigned into the red plane of your monitor, in that case you can see this is a standard false color composite. Instead of blue, green, and red band, we are using the green, red, and NIR bands. There is one shift from this. That is why it is called a standard false color composite. Any other combination than these three is known as your false color composite. So there are three things to know. One is the true color composite, second is the standard false color composite, and third is your false color composite. Okay, so I hope I have been able to make it uh, uh, make it simpler for you to understand what is the difference between an image, a true color image, true color composite, false color composite, and a standard false color composite. Now coming to the last slide of this, it is on the image histogram and what is the its importance or significance. So suppose you have an image and that has, should say, total 30 pixels. Okay, it is a small image, and these are the range of the pixel values. And this shows, the second column shows the number of pixels of that particular pixel value. So in that case, you see, this is the histogram generated out of this values and their frequency. Okay, so this is how it appears like this. Okay, so you have seen that Madam Susan has shown you how you can visualize histograms of an image that we're using for single band and for multiple bands at a time. So this gives an idea about what kind of features will be present if, so this is towards the lower values and this is towards the higher values. So if you all the pixels are present in this kind of thing, these areas, then you can simply say that these are particularly the image features are particularly from the land, and it could also be from the features which are much brighter. So it may be either from a coastal area, maybe beaches, or maybe of Himalayan terrain where there is a lot of glaciers or ice. If your image histogram shows or the peak is somewhere here, you can see that it is towards the lower part of this lower range of the values, and in that case you can simply say that the image features are mostly of that region, maybe of the water or something like that, because the values are much lower in that. So I hope I have been able to explain this to you. If there is any query, please, you are welcome. Any query?
Sir, I have a query other than this.
Uh-huh.
Like, sir, what is like in terrain navigation? What is the concept of this localization? Sir, वो समझ में नहीं आता है थोड़ा सा.
In terrain navigation, what is the concept of?
Localization, sir, जो fitting करते हैं वो localization basically क्या होता है, sir?
See, I need to read that term basically, which you are referring to.
ओके सर.
So
उसमें
basically,
सर ये है कि जैसे किसी भी न्यू लैंड साइट पे मान लीजिए सर, जैसे तो ये तो ओल्ड डेटा है ना हमारे पास जो हम लोग इसमें चेक कर रहे हैं. मान लीजिए सर कोई न्यू डेटा है उसमें अगर हम लोग को आइडेंटिफाई करना है कहाँ पे क्या कैसा टेरेन है किस तरह का है, तो जैसे सर जो इनर्शियल सिस्टम्स होते हैं ना नेविगेशन वाले,
hmm,
तो उसमें एक लोकलाइजेशन का कॉन्सेप्ट आता है कि आप उसको जो न्यू लैंड को मतलब अब जैसे सर ये है, जैसे ये खंबात रीजन है या फिर या गल्फ है, तो ये पहली बार
hmm,
जब इसे इसको आइडेंटिफाई किया गया तो पहले वो मार्किंग करके किया होगा ना सर, वो फिटिंग
hmm,
करके जो, तो उसमें आता है लोकलाइजेशन.
Okay, I think आप ये कहना चाह
जितना
रहे
मैं
हैं कि
समझ पा रहा हूँ सर, ये जो इसलिए मैंने
okay,
पूछा आपसे.
okay, okay, okay. So localization is something that whatever the knowledge that one may have or the technique that one may be aware of, so that needs to be put in the context of the local, the area that is being investigated or the operation being done in that area. So that is probably the is called
जैसे
as.
सर आपने वो बताया कि जैसे हम लोग पेयर करते हैं, मान लीजिए जैसे कोई इमेज में वाइट वाइट पॉइंट है या ब्लैक पॉइंट है, एरिया जो
Hmm,
होता है ना सर, तो उसमें
hmm,
जैसे हम उसको वो बाइंड करते हैं जो बाउंड्री बनाते हैं तब पेयर करके उसको क्लासिफाई करते हैं ना सर.
हाँ.
तो लोकलाइजेशन के लिए जरूरी पड़ेगा ना कि वो स्टार्ट कैसे हो वो चीज, राइट सर, क्योंकि ऐसा तो है नहीं कि कोई स्पेस लॉज हैं या इस टाइप के.
देखिए, ये भी जो है टाइम नेविगेशन जो है उसका भी अलग है. देखिए, एंड इट कुड बी डिफरेंट फॉर डिफरेंट टरेन्स. ओके, सो
राइट.
particularly people from say military background, they
राइट.
have a different concept. And also when it comes to terrain navigation in a mountainous area, it would be different. The navigation in the say plain area, that would be different again in the plain area, but in say certain kinds of soil, like say desertic areas, it will be different. So depending upon which terrain being say is the is a
मान लीजिए
particular
सर कोई
business.
मून का सरफेस है, क्रेटर है कोई इस type,
Hmm.
तो उसमें आप अब वो तो सर जैसे हमने उस दिन बताया था रोहित साहब सर ने कि आप उसमें मार्किंग्स हैं, जैसे आप जा सकते हो डायरेक्टली, पर कोई नया जैसे हमको प्रिसीजन प्रिसीजन निकालना है कुछ है ना सर, जैसे लैंडिंग के लिए होता है जैसे अभी हुआ था यहाँ पे, तो उसमें वो
Hmm.
लोग पार्ट ट्रैक करते रहते हैं कंटिन्यूअसली, तो
Yeah,
उसमें
yeah.
प्रिसीजन उसके
Yeah,
प्रिसीजन
that
के
is
लिए yes,
so
sir.
that is the automatic system that is built, and when the lander starts landing on the moon surface or Mars surface, so there is a continuous image acquisition of that part, and then there are certain things built into that. Particularly in this context, when we say it is basically the data detection. So
तो सर ये रिलायबल मतलब कितना रहता है, जैसे क्योंकि हमें कोई डायरेक्ट तो हम उसमें है नहीं सर, जितना मॉनिटर कर पा रहे हैं उतना ही कंट्रोल है एक्चुअल में
हाँ,
तो।
तो वो these systems are basically developed after a lot of experiments. So all possible combinations of the training are given in that. So the system will be reliable as much as it has been trained. So basically these are AI built systems. So जितना आपका आपने उसको ट्रेनिंग किया हुआ है सिस्टम को, उसके हिसाब से वो एक्वायर होगा। पर अगर if it is a new terrain which has not been trained, but अगर वो terrain की सिमिलरिटी है जो पिछला terrain से जो है इसका ट्रेनिंग हुआ है ना, क्लासिफायर का या फिर इमेज प्रोसेसिंग सिस्टम का, तो वो it will be if it is similar it will be working to quite a good extent. If it is a altogether different area than the one it has been trained with, so it might not function as expected.
सर एक और बता दीजिए डाउट कि ये जो रेडियोमेट्री और फोटोमेट्री में क्या डिफरेंस है, क्योंकि इमेज तो दोनों में कैप्चर हो रहा है, तो बेसिक डिफरेंस क्या हो गया?
नहीं, फोटोमेट्री जैसे मैंने एक सवाल पूछा था बीच में, व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन फोटो एंड एन इमेज?
2D और 3D का है मतलब वो तो
नहीं नहीं नहीं, that is not the photo, that is not of 2D and 3D. So dimension की बात नहीं है, it is about the way this the basically media or how it is captured. So photograph हम तब कहते हैं, it was a old term, it is a old term wherein if it has been taken through a certain media. आपको याद होगा पहले there used to be a different kinds of cameras, and it used to be having certain films that were required to be put in before we take a click the and capture.
रोल आते थे, फूजी फिल्म और
Yes,
ये सब
it used to be rolls, and those were basically having some chemicals in that. And once you take the photographs, then those rolls were processed in a dark room with certain chemicals.
नेगेटिव्स, पहले नेगेटिव्स करके फिर
Yeah, used to be negatives and it was converted into positives. So when it is done through that process, then actually it is called as a photograph. Otherwise, it is not a photograph. Okay. So रिमोट सेंसिंग के पार्लेंस में हम कहते हैं कि all the photographs are images. Okay, but not all images are the photographs.
ओके, वाइस वर्सा नहीं है मतलब,
Yes, yes.
सबसेट नहीं है उसका,
Yes,
मेन
yes.
इमेजेस है
So
सब।
images is any pictorial information, okay,
राइट,
but not all the images are the photographs. That is the basic difference between this.
तो जैसे सर इसमें रिफ्लेक्टेंस भी आ जाता है, स्पेक्ट्रल सिग्नेचर भी आ जाता है, तो ये तो रेडियोमेट्री आ जाएगा ना फिर सर पूरा, तो
हाँ, तो
ये
इमेज की टर्म में जब बात करते हैं तो when then it is a radiometry की बात करते हैं, radio scale की बात करते हैं. So if it is a photograph, तो वहाँ तो then यहाँ तो it is not a digital thing. तो digital thing अगर नहीं है तो फिर वो radiometry की बात ऐसा नहीं आएगी. पर it could be defined different terms. क्योंकि फोटोग्राफ में भी वहाँ पे भी आपका वो आता है, ठीक है, वहाँ पे भी आपका ग्रे स्केल के टर्म में आएगा ही आएगा, ठीक है. सो देयर इज अगेन इन्वॉल्व इन दैट. सो let me again think about it, what is the actual difference in photogram photometry and radiometry. Let us then we discuss some other time. Okay,
ओके सर।
but just for this for time being, any other question? Any other question? So I hope all your questions regarding those were covered and it has been addressed. And if still there is something that we can discuss some other time. So I am stopping here. Then the next session will start. So we'll take a break here.